Google style illustrations, how to create them. Today you'll learn how to do it super easy and fast using Figma. So if you know me for a really long period of time, you know that I'm a huge fan of Google products, and yeah, I have Pixel phone as well, in addition to my iPhone. And I'm a big fan of Google style illustrations. A long time ago, like about 5 years ago, no, it was more than that, maybe like, yeah, maybe 7, 8 years ago, I created lots of illustrations for some of the clients. Yeah, I was working as a UX UI designer. Sometimes I did web design for as a side hustle, and also I created illustrations, mostly for content creators. At that point, there were no such thing as a content creator. Well, there were bloggers, people who created their blogs and who wrote posts, and for those posts they needed illustrations, and I started creating illustrations. And later I remember I started looking at different other blogs, and I found the Google blog where they had so many amazing illustrations. They used just a couple of colors, but you could see the style in them. They were so cool, they were so incredible. And today I want you to introduce to the guy. I recognize that the guy who created illustrations for Google, I got acquainted with him only like in 2000, maybe 19 or 2020. But finally, I realized who created all those incredible illustrations for Google. And today I want to introduce you to this guy, to his style, and also I'll show you how to create something in a similar style using Figma. Because why I'm saying in a similar, because I'm not going to copy his style. I'm not going to create exactly what he's creating, because every single person, I believe that every single person, and you as well, has their own style. And this style is based on your background, on your experience, on what you're looking at the most. For example, if you prefer like cars, in this case you will be more like attached to the car styles, to a particular car style, and maybe to a particular color, and then you will be using them a lot in your works. If you love in web design, you love, for example, Swiss style, in this case you most likely you prefer minimalism, and you prefer less colors and more information, to provide more information. In Anyway, when it comes to illustrations, if you already a really great artist, then it will be much easier for you to create illustrations. But for people like me who didn't have background in, like, didn't finish any art schools, I'm a self-taught illustrator. So I got my style by recreating different illustrations of other, lots of, like hundreds, even thousands of different illustrations of other people. And then finally I found my style and I started creating illustrations in this style. And sometimes, of course, I can switch styles. Now, let's wrap up this introduction section to illustrations, and let's dive into the topic of how to create a Google style illustration. Right now, like, this is the illustration that you see. You can find it on the Google Flight, probably, website. Google Flights or Google Hotel, Google Travel, yeah. Go and find Google Travel, you will find these illustrations there. They're all created by this incredible guy. This illustration from Google Travel, some others from other sources. But you see there is a particular style in them where we use just a few colors. We have some bright colors to highlight specific elements on the illustration. Everything else is kind of background. It's not so important, but at the same time it provides some information to us. Then the same here. Cool, how to create this isometric style. Well, take a look at the bonus module of this course, isometric design and illustrations, because you will learn everything about isometric design there. You see, like everything is so simple, but at the same time is so beautiful, so um, everything makes sense, and you recognize, you have emotions when you look at that. You have particular emotions, and that's the most important in the illustration. It gives you some information, even if you have text in addition to the illustration. It's so cool when this text is supported by the illustration, and in this case you have an idea of, oh, okay, this is how it might feel like. The guy is German Kapitkov, or Kapitkov. Unfortunately, I really don't know how to say it in English, because yeah, I definitely can pronounce it in Russian, but in English, well, just look at this: German Kapitkov, and he's senior visual designer at Google, and he created all these amazing illustrations. You can find his illustrations also on his website, kapitkov.com, and kapitkov.com, where you will find his works. Yeah, that's it, what you need to know as of now about the style. And now we'll create something similar, something with a similar vibe, but of course something different. What we'll create today, we'll create illustration like this here. Let's imagine that you're creating an illustration for excuse me, for mobile application or a website or a blog, or maybe you're creating for a website. We'll create illustration like this. So why it's so cool to know how to create illustrations using Figma, using vector tools? Well, because later you can save them as SVG file, and then this SVG file, because it's vector graphic format, you will be able to make it any size without losing quality. And that's the power of vector graphics. And another thing is, yes, this module is graphic design. It's about how to become a graphic design pro. In this case, we're using Figma. Why? Most people think about graphic design like about something that you need to print. Not everything that you need to print is a graphic design. If you're creating logos, digital logos for using in the digital world, illustrations for using in the digital world, then you don't have to print them. You created them for digital purposes. And all the illustrations that we'll create today, we'll create them for digital purposes, while it's graphic design. Without graphic design, this will be boom. This is pure UI design. But when you add a little bit of graphic design to your mobile applications, to your websites, then you have a completely different feeling from it. Okay, let's start with these illustrations and how to create them. I'll show you a couple of really powerful techniques, really cool ones, and I never showed them anywhere before. You'll be the first. And now let's dive in. So the first one, let's take a look at the illustration first and analyze. Every single time when you create something, analyze first. Let's analyze. What do we see here? We see the houses on the background, and we understand that they are on the background because they're behind this box. Also, the houses have a gradient that goes from top to bottom. Okay. What else do we see? We see that the houses are in a particular, pretty similar style, but have different height. And then we have a box of a different color, and we see a little like some shadows. How to create all these things? Well, first of all, we'll start step by step. We are not every single time when you're creating something, go in simple steps and try to, if you see something complex, try to simplify it. Try to find super small, tiny parts that you can create, and then to it another simple part, and this is how out of simple parts you create a huge organism, complex one that looks like mind-blowing. We will start with creating a house first. That is on the background. In order to do that, first of all, of course, we'll create the artboard. In this case, it's a frame because we're using Figma. And here we work with frames. The difference between frames and artboards and groups I already explained in the first module, Figma Fundamentals, so take a look there. Now let's create a house. For these purposes, we will create first a rectangle, right? Then, now, please follow all these steps carefully because they will give you the understanding how everything works and how to create similar style in the future. Now I created just a rectangle. Now I'm going to go into edit mode by pressing enter. When I pressed enter, I hover on the side and add additional points here. Now I take and select two dots at the top and move them to the right. By holding shift and arrow right, I move them there. One side of the house is created. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate it, Command D. So I duplicated this design. Now I press Shift H to reflect it horizontally and move this side a little bit to the right. Our goal is to find the position where this house is exactly where we have the intersection. And now this particular part, we move on the background. In order to do that, I press Command Option arrow down. Command Option arrow down. If you are on Windows, Control Alt arrow down. What I just did, I put this layer on the background behind this layer. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to add colors. I press linear, boom. This will be our color that goes, I'll add a little bit of blue color here, that will go from top to bottom, but the bottom part will be much, much lighter, close to white, even white, like that. Perfect. The second thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this style, Command Option C, select the background part, Command Option V, and now I'm going to change the top color to something darker, because this way we show the perspective and that the light goes in a particular direction. It goes from somewhere from the top left corner and goes to the house. Boom, congratulations, we just created a house. And now if I group these parts together, Command G, now I have a house and I can squish it, resize, change the width of this house. I can duplicate it, move it to the background, Command Option arrow down behind this layer, squish and move up. And the second thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to duplicate this house one more time. And in this case, I press K and I make it a little bit bigger and a little bit V, a little bit wider, like that. Another thing that you can do is, honestly, you can just select the shapes that we already created for the house, press Enter to go to the edit mode, select the dots and move them to the right 2 times here. It means that we have to do the same 2 times here. Done. So we just created the background of this illustration. As you can see, it's not exactly the same as there. Why so? Just because we are not going to create exactly the same thing. And while I created this illustration, I want to show you how exactly the process behind it, the mindset, the logic. And what is happening is, you can see we added the gradient to make, and everything in the gray color, to make it, to put it on the background, because this is not the most important information here. We just show that, okay, we have, it's happening somewhere in the city. And then we change the gradient on the right side to show some kind of perspective using light. That's why all the houses here have on the right side a little bit darker background, and on the left side a lighter version of it. Now let's go to the box. How to create this open box. Not to do that, every single complex thing is created out of simple shapes. So as you can see, it consists of a rectangle. The next thing that we see, probably you see, oh my God, how to go further? Well, it's just make it a little bit easier for you to understand. What else do we see here? We see another rectangle. So I press duplicate it and move it here. So now we have another rectangle. Now let's change the color to something similar to what we have there. And for this color, it will be a little bit darker. Done. So we just created the base for our box. What's next? Next thing, we have to create this top side to show that this box is open. Now the next technique. Again, follow all the techniques and you will become so professional. You will design like a pro. The next technique, I call it wrap method, because when you have a gift for someone and you wrap it, in this case, you have a box and you put one side, then the next side, then the next side. At the same time, if you want to open the box, unwrap it, then you open one side, another one, another one. And that's exactly what we're going to do right now. We're going to create out of one rectangle and another side. We'll create the duplicate of this rectangle, but some sides of it will be connected to other parts. How to do that? So select the rectangle that we already created, Command D, and then go to edit mode, select 2 points and unwrap. Boom, open it. You see how cool is that? We just created one open side. The next thing what we will do, we'll press Command D, duplicate, Shift H to reflect horizontally, move it to the left side here, exactly where the dot is, or where the dots intersect, and move it on to the background. Move it to the back of this box. Let's take a look that we have everything perfectly aligned. Yep. Cool. So now we have a left open side and right open side, but because right open side, it's really hard to see that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to Command C and change the color of this side, because we have to show the difference between the side and the open part of the box. And also, I always love to add some shadows, because they create additional, like, more realistic feeling. Even if it's an illustration, it's unrealistic by default, but I love to add this additional feeling. And to add shadow here, like you see here, what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this part, Command D, and again, using unwrap method, I move this part here, but this dot, I move and create as a rectangle. Now I'll move this particular layer behind this layer. Done. And now I'm going to create the linear gradient that goes from top and its dark side to transparent like this. Done. So now we have a shadow from this side, which is cool, awesome. The next thing, what we gonna do next is we will add additional shadow here on the background, as you can see it here. In order to do that, we will use the rectangle that we already have, Command D, make it a little bit smaller, move it to the right, And now again gradient that goes linear from left to right. It can start right from here, but the color of it will be darker than the color that we have there, and we will go into white. Perfect. And now we move it to the background. Done. Now we have a shadow, but in addition to that, I can change the opacity of it. So I just press 5 to change the opacity of the layer to 50%. Done. So you just created a box. Later you will be able to create absolutely any boxes because now you know this technique. And the next thing, just the final one, what we'll do, we'll create the file that is right inside of this box. Too much. Okay. And we will make the gradient, we'll make the different color. We can leave it just with the solid color, but with the gradient, it will show that it goes somewhere inside. So linear, done, but in this case, it's better to use the color itself. Done. And now you have a box, you have exactly the illustration that we have here. Just follow all these techniques, all these methods, and you will be able to create exactly the same style. Next thing that I recommend usually to do, because you're gonna use it in the future, for example, I recommend you to select all the parts of the box, Command G, group it together and call it box, for example. So now you have a box. Okay, we missed shadow here. Where's the Mr. Shadow? Command G, box. Done. So now when we have a box here, we can put it whatever we want, but we know exactly that we can select just the box. And we can select just houses on the background, and then you can call it BG as a background or houses. It just up to you, because you created this illustration and you're gonna use them. Done. And then if you want to, you just add download the file. That's it. Digital illustration that you can use in your designs using these couple of techniques where you can edit dots, add additional dots to the shape, so then you can change them. Gradients for light to show where the light goes. Colors to show the foreground and background, and of course some shadows and unwrap method that allows you to create out of one shape multiple shapes. Done with this illustration. I hope you learned it. Done. Let's go to the next one, and the next one is map. How to create it. Again, if you saw the previous lesson, how to create icons with Figma, in this lesson we will create an illustration out of the icon. So I showed you in the previous lesson how to create icon. Now I'll show you how to create an illustration out of the pin icon. So again, we create a frame artboard. Then I'm going to start with background first, and then we'll put something on the foreground. Okay, for the background, I create a rectangle, then I go to edit mode, move these dots a little bit, and then I select dots on the left side and move them up. Because I want to create a perspective here, so I take this dot and move it a little bit down, because the perspective goes in that direction. The next thing, Command D, using unwrap method, I select these two dots and open the map. But now I take this dot and move it here. And then Command D, unwrap method, move these two dots here, take this one on the right side and move it there, because we have here, we want to achieve the perspective, that perspective goes in that direction. Done. Looks weird. Why? Because we haven't started working with colors yet. And in this case, what we're gonna do, we're gonna add colors and we're gonna add gradient in this case. A linear that goes from right to left or left to right, it doesn't matter because we will use basically only the direction, and we make the right side a little bit lighter. Then Command Option C, Command Option V to copy and paste the style here. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to check the difference between these two sides. I want to put this side a little bit lower, or this part a little bit higher, so we have kind of similar. Yep, pretty similar. And the next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to add shadows, also from the map. Command D and move these dots down right here. Okay, and now linear that goes from right to left, but in this case this part will be darker, while this particular side will go into transparent. Put it on the back, shadow created, Command D, duplicate it, move it to the other side, move it down, move these dots here. We don't care about some other dots, but we don't care if you don't care about performance. I usually prefer to have as less layers as possible for the same thing, and as less joints, as less points as possible. So I'm going to connect them together. So now we have 3 points instead of 4. And next thing, I'm going to change the gradient direction, size. Boom, map is created. Now let's create a pin in front of it. Command G, this is our map. Command R, map. Done. Next thing, pin. How to create pin. You already learned from the previous lesson, so we'll just repeat that. You create a circle, go to edit mode, move the bottom dot down, press Command click on this side, but then Command and a little bit to the sides, just to add a little bit of roundness here, and to remove this strong change, like to make it this curve a little bit smoother. I take this handle and move it down a little bit, select on the other side and move it down a little bit. Done. Next thing that I'm going to do, O, here, go press subtract selection. Now we have nothing inside. Boom. Next thing, we change the color to red. Next thing, you know what? I'm gonna change it a little bit from what we have here. I'm gonna do one additional thing here. I'm gonna create a linear gradient and go from top to bottom. The top part is a little bit lighter than the bottom part. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to select the ellipse from here, holding Option, I move it outside, so now we have another ellipse here. I move it down or up. I'll move it probably up. And the next thing, no, I'll hold it here, Command D, move it up, another part, select these two ellipses, and now subtract selection. Now I have this additional part here, but I'm gonna make it dark version of this layer. This way we added some kind of third dimension here. So we see the inner part here, and now we can even just move it a little bit down to have this part as a circle, maybe a little bit up. Yep. Now it's more like a 3D pin. And the next thing that I'm going to do, I press O, I create here the circle like this. But you know what? It shouldn't be exactly the circle. So, so you can create a rectangle here. And then for this rectangle, I'm going to use Command Option C, Command Option V. Okay, Command Option C, Command Option V. Same gradient from the very beginning, but what I'm going to do next, I'm going to make this color transparent. Well, not white, but transparent. And not that side, but this. And the other side, I'll make a little bit darker. And I'll also change the opacity to 50% and move it behind the pin. So now we have a shadow out of the pin. You see how in a couple of really simple and fast steps, we created this illustration. The next thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to select all the things that we have here that we created for the pin. Command G, Command R, pin. Now we can move it here. I would make it a little bit bigger. And now we have the map on the background. We have the pin here. By holding Option and aligning the entire illustration to the center here, I want to check that exactly the pin is in the middle, so it should be optically here. And this part also, because the light part is much lighter, the left part is much lighter. In this case, the optical alignment should be, the element should be somewhere here to be exactly in the middle. So for our eye to perceive it like in the middle of the screen. Done. And the final thing, then, if you're gonna use it, let's imagine on your website, you can add like About Us page, our address here, and then here this will be the address 133 21 7th Street, New Toronto, Canada. New Toronto, because maybe can you imagine that there is an address that exists and then like it's in Toronto? No. Then we make this a little bit smaller, and that's it. This is the part that you can use on the website for the address. And in addition to that, if you want to, what you can do, you can take the entire illustration, Command G, address, and then move it out of our board, so we'll keep it. The next thing, K, make it a little bit smaller, select everything, Command Option L, Option A. Now move it up together, and let's imagine that this is your website, which is 1440. Constraints, check the constraints, select, boom, left, 1440. This is your address. The size is pretty small for the title, so it will be 28 here and 21 here. You might say it's big. Yeah, 16. Awesome. So this is the website. Is it 1440? Wow, so huge in comparison to everything else. And then you will have like grid. How to create grids you already know from the previous module. And on the right side you will have the map that shows where exactly it is. So basically everything that you're creating in a graphic design, it's not necessary that you have to use it for print. You can use it in digital world for websites, for mobile applications, and this is how it looks. And if you want to go then next and create here 375 by 812 frame not inside of the frame but separately, select, move down, Command Option T, Option H, and move it here. Or maybe it will be on the website, not on the website, on the mobile, in the mobile application, and the map will be here. And you select it. If it's a responsive website on the mobile screen, you will see something like this, or like this. That's it, by using the same methods. And the final, yes, it's a pretty long lesson, but the final method that I'm going to show you, it's really cool in my opinion, and I really want to share it with you, how to create one additional specific style of the illustration. You probably saw it a lot. Let's create it. Let me show you a really cool thing. You create a rectangle, then you go to the edit mode and you add lots of points here, like not like as much as you need, but once we'll add all of them, you will understand what we create them for. Done. Then select every second pair and move it inside. Every second pair and move it inside on a different distance. So the next pair will be, we don't have dots, so we'll create another one. Select and move it inside. I just need these dots, guys. Yep. Now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to select these particular dots and I press Option W. You know what? Option H. No, Option V. That will be the best. Option, again, Option V. I haven't selected. Option V. So to create these rectangles, of course, we could subtract, create lots of rectangles, other rectangles separately. It would be maybe a faster way to do that. Like you create a rectangle and then you create another rectangle here, 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 and then select all together, combine, and then you press subtract. And now you have pretty similar result, but a little bit faster. But I wanted to show you this additional method that is really also cool. But then when you created that, where you can use it? Well, select, go here, and change the corner radius to something big. And now you have this thing that allows you to create this style of illustrations. You probably saw them many times already, where one part is look like, let's take a look, maybe German also has it somewhere. Not here, but anyway, I'm pretty sure that you saw these kind of illustrations when you have these lines separate from everything else. And I'm going Shift V. So now they're not as similar. Now when I'm happy with the result, Command E, and now I can do some stuff specifically with these dots. So I can move this part a little bit to the right, this a little bit to the left, and this much more to the left. And I'll do the same on the other side. Now you have, I'll remove this one. Now we have kind of background, and where you can use it? Well, you can make it as the sky out of it, like this. You'll put the sun somewhere here. Perfect. Then in front of everything, we will put the house. We'll already create multiple houses. Yep. Let's create the entire city. And maybe, just maybe, you have some palms there. And to do that, just one side. Wow, I love this color. Let's keep it. The next thing that I'm gonna do, O. Let's create an ellipse, move it down, Make it a little bit bigger. Select, subtract selection, Command E, and we will put it here. Command D, Shift H, we'll put this part on the other side. If you don't want to move other parts of the illustration, my recommendation to you, select the layer and press here lock. So now every single time when I do something here, I will not touch the background part. This additional thing that I want to share with you. Then we Command D, rotate it much more, a little bit smaller. Command D, Shift H, move to the right side, move it here, make it a little bit bigger to have, you know, diversity here. And the final thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to add some additional things like P, select together this and this, subtract selection, and now I'm going to go here and copy this by holding Option and add additional cuts in the leaf. And I'm going to do the same on this side. So I'm going to do that, P, like that, select, subtract selection, awesome, select, Shift X, and now let's make them the same color as our, okay, Command E, the same color as our that part. Congratulations, you just created another illustration that you will be able to use somewhere in your work. Unlock the layer, move it down. I love design. I don't know like what about you, but I just can't stop. And then you can also create maybe something like shape here that goes with R dot P, remove this side, Command D, Shift H, move to the other side. Why I'm doing it so fast? Because these are Figma Fundamentals module, the previous module, so I recommend you to watch it, to how to work with pen tool, how to work with absolute everything else things I explain there in detail. So here I just use all the knowledge that you already got from the previous module. And now you have a ship. Well, it's hard to see, Command D, where exactly it is, so maybe we'll change it to something like that. And the entire boat will be linear gradient that goes from top to bottom, from this color to white color. But not too white. Let's use the blue one, lighter version of blue, and here. Oh, you know what? I really loved the previous version. I'll just move this part back, up, and duplicated it. Move it closer. And that's it. Now we have the sky. Now we have this boat here. Now we have kind of sea or something like that. And on top of it, if you want to go really like crazy, Command G, Command D, Shift H, K, scale it down, and move it to the other side. You created yet another illustration for your website. You see how using simple shapes, you can achieve great results. Everything that I did here, maybe it was pretty fast, but at the same time, I hope that You already know from the previous model how to use Figma. I explained everything, every single step there, every single panel, every single method, every single piece that is hidden behind those three dots when you click on something, and then you see what is there, what is behind there. When we have a text, what is behind those text there. So I explained every single step there. Now you are prepared to create something like this super easy and fast. And while this is a graphic design, you can use it on your websites. Maybe when you're creating a website for hotels or or maybe for vacation, or maybe a blog post about how to spend less money when you travel to Dominican Republic, for example, or to Colombia, or just to Greece, just anywhere, you know, you can use it there. I hope you enjoyed this lesson and you are ready for the next one. We'll be talking about presentations. And that will be a mind-blowing lesson, because the stuff that you will learn in the next lesson, you will see a lot. While it's graphic design, you will see a lot of it in web design. Yep. Everything that we see today in the digital world, in web design, mobile vacations, lots of it came from, first of all, from physical world, and then from graphic design. See you in the next lesson. Have you ever had to create presentations or decks to present your designs, or maybe to create presentations for your clients? You know, there are so many different ways to not only to create presentations, but also to use presentations. Sometimes we use them to attract clients. Sometimes we use them to present our ideas, to pitch our ideas. And sometimes we sell the templates for presentations. Sometimes we sell the presentations themselves, or we create presentations for the clients. Or when you're creating, for example, a webinar for yourself, if you want to sell, for example, a course, or you're creating a presentation, a webinar in the form of presentation for your client, well, you have to know how to create them. This will be not just one lesson. Otherwise, it would be like a really huge, like about 2 hours lesson. And I don't want to overwhelm you all at once. So it will be a series of lessons, not one by one, but today we'll cover some really important topics about presentations. And then after a few lessons about some other things, we will get back to presentations and we will add more and more and more. I designed this course a specific way that will help you to actually achieve the best results. And you will see when we will get back to presentations in the next part, you will see that between this part, between this lesson and the next one about presentation, we will cover so many important topics, so many important ideas and the ways to create something, so you will be able to use them in the presentations. So let's dive into the presentations with Figma. Because presentation is a graphic design, it's a graphic design module. Well, presentations with Figma. What do we have to keep in mind every single time when we create, I would say absolutely anything, but because we are talking about presentations, yes, presentations. First of all, it's strategy, then user experience, storytelling, content, grid, layout, typography, adjustments, if we have to make some, style, graphics, test, animations in motion, and presentation. I haven't included here colors, but honestly, colors is also an important thing. I just thought that it will be great just to cover them in styles. Okay, let's go one by one. Let's cover each of these items and learn a little bit more about design in general, so you will be able to apply the same approach whether you're designing website or a mobile application or a game or TV application or some ATM machine UI. It doesn't matter. If you follow this specific flow that described here, you will your process, your workflow will be more efficient and much, much easier. So let's dive into strategy. Strategy goes first. Before that, as you can see, there is a grid on the background. I just want to show you that, well, there can be a grid for a presentation as well. And this is unconventional grid. I'll explain you later how to create one and why I created it specifically this way a little bit later, but for now, I'll switch it off. So I need to select Command G. Strategy. A good presentation always starts with strategy. And what is strategy? In just a few words, strategy is the path from point A to point B that you're creating for your project, product, or business. Or life, even life, yeah. It works for absolutely everything. But here, because we are talking about presentation, let's cover strategy for the presentation. So there is a point A. What is that? And point B. What's that? Well, point A is where you are right now with this presentation. Are you designing this presentation for a client? Are you designing it to pitch your idea? Are you designing it to present your ideas during the show and tell for your company? Are you designing a webinar? What is that? Where are you starting from? What's your point A? And the next thing is, what is your point B? Where are you moving to? It means that should it be a presentation in a corporate style? Should it be something in a really creative way or minimalistic way? What's the goal of this presentation? Like to convert, to get a client? How many slides? Actually, it doesn't matter, but we'll cover it later. So when we understand the point A and point B, we can start thinking how we can get from point A from the current position to point B. What will be the best way? Because honestly, usually people think that strategy is something just one thing. No, there can be like multiple strategies to achieve the same goal. Some of them are better, some of these ways are shorter, some of them are real long, and some of them will not bring you to your goal while you think like, yeah, that's a good idea, and then you start working and boom, I'm not there. And then you start from the very beginning. Strategic thinking is really important for any person. Whether you're a designer, developer, manager, content creator, thought leader, it doesn't matter. When you have strategic thinking, you're able to achieve your goals much, much faster because you are thinking about the what way I will choose, what approach I will choose to get to my goal. And when it comes to presentation, you also think about it. Okay, I have to create a presentation. What it should be? Who is it for? What's the goal of it? What the final goal that I want to achieve? And what will be the best way, the fastest way for me to achieve that? And then you understand that, maybe I have to think a little bit more about it, about the presentation, about all other aspects of the presentation, and then it will be much easier for me to create this presentation. So think about strategy as the art of building a path from point A to point B. And the more you create strategies, the much easier it will be for you in the future to create the best ones for absolutely everything. Because strategy and strategic thinking is like a skill. And the more you practice, the better you become. So every single time when you're thinking about something for your life, for your business, for the product that you are going to build, whether it's a website or mobile application, or even for the project like a presentation. What do you want to achieve? Where you are right now, what do you have? Do you have content? Do you know who you're designing for? So collect all this information first. And once you have the information, it will be much easier for you to do that. And this is where we come to the next point, where from strategy, we'll go to user experience. And you might think, well, it's a graphic design. Why user experience? You know what? Like everything in our life is user experience. You see me right now, right here in this circle, in this where I am right now. So you see this presentation above me, and you see me, you see my face. And it shows you, okay, this is the content, and this is the person who is talking. So I understand, I have this connection. This is user experience. But at the same time, I could, like even the sound here, you can clearly hear me, right? You can see this presentation. You see how I go from slide to slide to bring you this knowledge, to make it really valuable and helpful for you so you can use it later. This is user experience. Every single aspect is user experience. And when you're creating a presentation, you also have to think about user experience. And how does it work when it comes to presentations? What is the user experience of the presentation? Well, you have to know where this presentation will be presented, by who it will be presented, who is the audience, who are the people who will watch this presentation, then how it will be presented, what time of the day will it be, what is the room where this presentation will be presented, like when, where exactly, and I'll give you examples in a second. And what will be the next steps? So once it will be presented, where it will go next? All of these things are really important. Ask as much questions as possible, and then little by little you will understand what is the most important when it comes to presentation and what is least important, so you can start from the first important, you can prioritize things. So let's go step by step. Who is the audience? And not only who is the audience, who will be presenting it, and who is the audience, who will be hearing and seeing this presentation. Who is presenting? Maybe it will be you, maybe it will be someone else, maybe you're designing it for someone else. And here we will have two different user experiences, because if you're designing it for you, for yourself, well, then you can follow particular ideas where you understand, okay, I'll skip this slide, I'll skip this information because I will just talk about it. But when you create it for someone else, you have to work in a collaboration with that person and understand how it works. Then where audience, who it will be presented to. Will it be a client? Will it be your manager? Will it be other designers from your company? Or will it be not presented at all, but it will be presented in the form of a product somewhere on Creative Market, and you're just gonna create a template for the presentation, and then you're gonna sell it? Then it will be designed in a little bit different way. Who is the audience? Are these people like a corporate people, business people, other designers? Are they more creative, casual? All of these things important because they will define the style that you're creating it for. And also they will define what will be included in the presentation. Next thing is where. Well, where it will be presented. As I said already, it can be Creative Market, or maybe it will be in a small room just from your laptop, showing like, look, so here and the next slide and the next one, just showing the person that is over the shoulder. Or maybe it will be a conference room, not a small one, a little bit bigger one, and will be presented on a TV, like 60-inch TV. It also user experience. Or will it be presented on a huge wall somewhere in the conference hall for 2,000 people. And then the design will be a little bit different because you will have to keep in mind also the huge screen. And you don't need to overwhelm people with information because they will not be able to read everything. But at the same time, you will have to keep in mind a light. So if it's a really dark conference hall, in this case, it's better to create your presentation in a dark mode, in dark theme. Because it will be easier to consume the information, to digest the information. If it will be presented in a Lightroom, not in Lightroom, Adobe Lightroom, but in the bright room, so the room where there is lots of light. In this case, if it will be dark presentation, then it will be too much light and it will be really huge contrast between the background of the presentation and the text itself and the room itself. So in this case, it's better to create the presentation in light colors. So where is also important. Then when it will be presented. You might be thinking, well, does it matter? Well, I would say yes. So for example, if you're presenting in the morning, then you can have a little bit different mood in your presentation. If it will be presented really in the evening, like late, almost late night, when everyone is already tired after a real long and hard working day, in this case, it's better to make your presentation a little bit more engaging rather than corporate with lots of text with boring typography. So when it will be presented, also part of the user experience. Then how it will be presented, because it can be just showing slides, or someone will be talking about it. Also, how many slides per talk there will be. Will be all the entire information on the slide, or on the slide we will have just main like key points, and then the speaker will present everything else. The next thing is how it will be presented. Will it be a webinar, sales webinar, or will it be just a fun pitch during the show and tell in your company? Hey guys, look at what I just created today. It's mind-blowing animation that we created for our product, and it's really easy to build for our developers. By the way, we already created with developers in collaboration. We created this animation already, and it's in test mode. So look at that, and boom. So you had a slide, just one slide, no animation, and then you click present, and then the animation starts. And that's it. This is how it will be presented. Or it will be presented in a little bit different way, where the speaker is talking slide by slide, word by word. So you hear, it's like a book. It's like reading a book. How it will be presented is really important when you're creating a presentation. So keep it in mind. And then why? Why you're creating this presentation? What is the reason? What is it for? If it's about conversions, well, then you have to know a little bit about psychology, and you have to know that, well, it's not ethical maybe, but when you're creating a deck, if it's a little bit more overwhelmed with information, then you overload the cognitive load. And if the speaker who is selling talks really fast, and then you will be even more and more overloaded with information, and then they will boost everything, every single slide with lots of powerful words that will go directly to your subconscious mind, and then in the end you will want to buy that product because because your brain is already overwhelmed and you're like, oh yes, I want that. So this is conversational presentation and way of presentation. It can be something really creative and in minimalistic style, Swiss style, lots of typography, just numbers, not so much graphics. Why you are creating it? Why are you creating? Or maybe you want to make money. In this case, it should be catchy from the very beginning, and then it can be really boring in the middle, just because your goal was to sell it. And while I mean by boring, I don't mean that it's bad. I just mean that the presentation should deliver the information anyway. How it will be presented, and why it's important to create some catchy and really beautiful first slides, just to sell it, just to go to the market, just to be a little bit louder than everyone else, so people take a look at you. And by louder, I mean not like yelling. By louder, I mean to have some really catchy graphics or catchy typography or catchy way of presenting this presentation. So why? What is your reason for creating this presentation? And the final one is what's next? when you know what's next, I mean, where after the presentation was presented, where it will be used then later. Is it like the end? Well, then it's one user experience. If it's after that, you will have to send it once you present it, then you will have to send it to the client by email. Well, in this case, you will have to think also about having a really good lightweight PDF file out of this presentation. Or maybe it will be just a link to a Figma. Or by what's next, it can be, well, let's imagine that you presented your speech on a conference, and then in the end, you want to provide to everyone who was on the conference and everyone who knows you, you want to upload it to SlideShare, and then this specific presentation will be presented in an embed form on your website. So keep in mind all these different things. Answer this question when you're creating something. And the more you practice these questions with every single thing that you are doing, trust me, it will be for you just like a second. Just in a second, you will, not in a second, but anyway, in a minute, you will answer these questions immediately, or you will ask them your client, or you will ask them the person who you will be creating your product for or presentation for. So keep it in mind. This is important. Yes, I know, guys, this lesson is a little bit different, but it's so important to cover this theory before we move into practice. And I hope that you enjoy it, because I wanted to create it in a form like a masterclass, like a full masterclass. Just this lesson, after this lesson, I want you to be like, oh my God, that was mind-blowing. That was mind-blowing. I really loved this lesson. It's like, well, it's just not about Figma. It's just exactly about design. Wow. This is what I want you to feel after this particular lesson of this course. And this is just, imagine that course. Then inside of the course you have modules, and inside the module you have lessons, and the lesson is like the entire course. Yes, this is how much value I want to give you here. Let's move to the next point. And the next one is storytelling. If you're creating just, if you're just presenting anything, it's really great to know storytelling and how to tell a story. Whether you're creating stories on Instagram, whether you're creating posts, by the way, we'll cover storytelling specifically for Instagram posts and Instagram carousels, and also Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts. In the next module, where we'll be talking about design for content creators, in this specific module, let's talk about storytelling for presentations. Well, storytelling for presentations. What is the flow? At least, it doesn't mean that you have to follow this particular flow, but at least this is something that I would recommend. Well, where we start? Of course, we start with the introduction. First of all, we have to know what is the topic, who is talking, where it's presented, some additional information, just the first slide, so we understand what is the starting point. Then we give some context, because people didn't know that you designed something. For example, if you're presenting for the show and tell, or people don't know who you are or why you are talking about this specific topic. So you have to give them the context so they understand. So you will be on the same, like in the same room, and all of you will know what is the topic of this presentation. Everyone is on the same page. So we give context. Next thing, we talk about point B, where we wanna, so during this presentation, by the end of this presentation, where we will be, what you will learn after this presentation, what you will learn today, what people will get in the end of the presentation, what your client will achieve if it's a pitch, for a client, what a client will achieve if they work with you or with your company. So this is the point B. We have to give this desired state first, so they can taste it, so people can taste, so they can get interested in what you're talking about, or in what the person will be talking about, the person who you created this presentation for. Okay? The next thing is point A. Then, when we showed where we're going, then we get back to the default like starting point, to the very first parameters, where we're starting from. It's similar to context, but now we talk specifically about where we're starting from. Then we talk about challenges, because in order to achieve point B, we will have some challenges and we will have to overcome them. The next thing is objections. People will definitely have questions over your presentation about this and that and that. What about this? What about that? So that's why it's really great if you are able to cover their objections, cover their questions during the presentation in the form of them. It can be kind of, Q&A, but inside of the presentation. Or it can be specific objections that, for example, if you are creating the sales webinar. By the way, we'll probably create a sales webinar presentation deck in the next module. Yes, we will do that. Anyway, objections. You cover all the objections, or at least some of them, or the most important ones, like money, time, Then reasoning. It's really important to cover why we are doing all these things. For what? We have to know like where we're moving to. Why? If you don't know why, we don't have clarity. And if you don't have clarity, then in this case, we don't know why we should do something, why we should at least listen to. So this is where we increase engagement again, because over the presentation, the people's attention can go down, and then we have to bring it up. Down, bring it up. And this is what we do here. And then once we covered all these things, we jump to results. And this is kind of like point B. Or this is where we can predict some metrics, business metrics. Or this is the point where we start our sales pitch. Before that, it was informational pitch, and then we go to sales pitch. And then conclusion. And in the conclusion, depending on who you are creating it for and everything, the conclusion will be different. It can be about talking about next steps. It can be CTA. Yes, in the presentation, it can be CTA. A CTA to go to a website. A CTA to not to click on the button, but to watch that video. The conclusion can be, it's kind of outro, can be thanks for watching. Usually I don't recommend thanks for watching. Thanks for your time. Thanks for attention. Because in these cases, it's just like, okay. Yeah, you're welcome. Bye-bye. No. It's better to start something after presentation. It's better to have something in mind what will go next. So to start conversation like, so guys, what do you think about it? What do you think about the presentation? Do you have any questions? So now I'm ready to answer your questions. Conclusion should be just the beginning point for the next interaction. So this is the storytelling of the presentation. You can follow this specific example. You can remove some of the points, but I don't recommend you to remove at least, the minimum one. Let me show you the minimum of this thing. This and probably that. No, we'll have to go back here. I'd say this is the minimum point. Introduction, context. Without context, nothing matters. Nothing, because if people don't understand what you're talking about, point B, point A, we have to show, because people always moving to the desired state from their pains. So we have to show where we're going and from where we're going. Then challenges. Without challenges, doesn't make sense. Well, it makes sense anyway to move, but there will be some challenges, and we have to think about them and predict them. And then we have to show the results, and of course, conclusion. So this is the minimum of storytelling. Keep it in mind when you're creating presentations. Then content. Content is king. Honestly, yes. That's the most important thing. The more I'm in the design industry, the more I understand that content is much more important than design. Sometimes content is the design itself. Yeah. Honestly, when it comes to presentations and websites, content is the most important. When it comes to UI, and I'm talking about mobile applications and TV apps or any kind of apps or web apps where we have a product where we mostly focused on UX writing rather than on content itself, then content, I would say, less important. There are some other things that we will cover in the mobile apps module. But when it comes to presentation, content is king. So once you know who you're designing for, you have the strategy, you defined user experience, you did your research, and you understood what the storytelling will be, like the main key points. It's time to create content. And it's really great if you have a copywriter who will create content. If you don't, maybe it can be provided by your client. If not, maybe it can be provided by some other people in the company. If still not, then probably it will be you. And if you are not a copywriter, if you are not familiar with how to create a copy, if you are not familiar how to create copy for websites and what's the difference between copy for websites and presentations, well, it's better to learn a little bit more about psychology and to learn from all these experiences. I would definitely cover this in a specific way in one-on-one. I would help you with this particular point through the mentorship work or consultation, but we will not be able to cover absolutely every single aspect and specifically content, because there are so many different ways to create content and there are so many different types of presentations. And of course, we'll not be able to cover all of them. And specifically, this is a practical course. Just only this lesson and some other will be super important to cover theory for some specific topics. But try to find someone who will create content for the presentations. And if you can't, you'll create it yourself. And sometimes I'm pretty sure that you can be really creative with that, and you can create a really great content. Especially if you already have strategy, if you did your user research, and not only user research, I would call it user experience research. And then if you define the storytelling for the presentation, content will be much, much easier. So like storytelling is like table of contents that will be covered in a presentation, where content is specific content for each table of contents. Got it, right? Okay, let's move to the next point. The next point is grid. I will say it here, I will say it in the next modules, I will say it everywhere. It's not the grid that defines the content and the layout. It's the content that defines the grid. And depending on the content that you will create, you will build different grids. But if it's too hard for you, and maybe you came to this course with a web design experience, in this case, well, you can go with a regular 12-column grid, and that's it. By the way, let me bring here really important information, that the size of the presentation is 1920 by 1080. This is a regular 16 by 9 type of presentation. Sometimes it can be 16 by 10, but in most of the cases, the Full HD size, 1920 by 1080, is just perfect size of the presentation. Then columns. It can be 12 columns grid, 8 column grid, 7, 4, 3 columns. Now it's time to talk about the grid that I have here, because I think it's really interesting to cover something different rather than creating regular 12, 8, 4, 2 columns grids, right? And let me explain, by the way, all of these numbers. Well, 12 column grid is just a regular one. Sometimes in presentation you can use 16 column grid. It depends on the content that you have. In the Typography Masters course, I cover like everything about grids, but here we'll cover some of these things as well. So 12 column grid, the regular one. Okay, 8 column grid is when you have, for example, you know that you will have maximum 4 columns of the content. And that's it. So 8 columns will be more than enough. 7 column grid. Why 7? Because in this case you will be able to have asymmetrical layout. An asymmetrical layout looks much more interesting, more attractive, and at the same time more engaging. And in this case 7 column grid will be really much better way to do that. Then 4 column grid, it's basically it's like 8 divided by 2, the same idea. And 3 column grid, and again in 3 column grid it can be 3 equal grids if you will have maximum 3 columns of content, or it can be non-regular asymmetrical view where you will have 1 column that is bigger than next to. Now let's create the grid that I have here. In order to do that, we go here, presentation 16 by 9, done, created. And here, let me show you what I have, not an auto layout. Grids, I click on these dots because I created already styles. How to create styles, you know, from the first module, Figma Fundamentals. I create that, and boom, here we have a grid. And it looks like that. And you're like, wow, what? Well, it's 7 column grid with an additional padding grid. I call it padding grid. What does it mean? So let me show you. And why 7 columns? You can have a title here, right? That goes, because we have padding, that goes up to here. And then you can have 2 columns of content here. That is much smaller than that. Boom. And it's similar to like 3 columns here, and like not 3 columns, 1 column here that is bigger than next to here. Done. The next thing, what is interesting about that, you can create something here that is big enough, like an image, and then the content on this side. You see this padding? It allows me to put the content, to have the space between the image and the content. But the image itself takes more space than the entire space here. I can go even further. I can go like that for content and like this for the image. And it will make much more engaging and interesting layout when I'm presenting something. I can have the image this big, and then the content, instead of there, it will be somewhere here with a up like that. Honestly, I would go with additional padding here. Like this. It looks really much more interesting rather than if we create just 2 column grids, so where everything will be right in the middle. Or we can go even further and to cover everything from left to right up to here. And here we'll have the content, or the content goes still here, and this will be the image point where we'll have something like, if it's a business topic, people talking about something, and here we have our content on the right side. You see, it's just a little bit more interesting way of presenting information where you can have can take a little bit more space on the right or on the left side. So we can change the direction and we'll have to make some adjustments. This will go there and this content will go up to here. Boom. It can be also part of the presentation. You see, it looks a little bit more interesting. You can achieve the same result with just 12 column grid, where you will give, for example, the left part 3 columns and the right part 9 columns. So if it's much easier for you, just go with that. In this case, for me, it's much easier to create content. How to create this type of grid? Just let's take a look. Here I have 2 grids. The first one is 7 columns, center, with a width is at this specific, not here, is this specific area, 220, as you can see. 220 width, offset we don't have it because it's a center type grid, and Gata 0. Why Gata is 0? Gata 0 allows me to create just lines here. If I switch it off, you see it lines. If I create Gata like 20, then I have this type of grid. And I could have it here like that, 60, and because it's 60, 220 minus 60, 160. So it can be something like this, 7 columns, and we have a gap here, but we don't have the lines. Okay, we have the line where we can start from, but the next point takes space from us. We are not as flexible as when we have just lines. If you want to learn more about grids in general, like all the aspects of grid, I recommend you to take a look at the Grids and Layouts Masterclass, because there we cover all the grids for websites, for presentations, for mobile applications, and all the different types of them, starting from 1 column to up to 16 columns. So just go and take a look at that. I will leave the link in this specific lesson as well. But it's much easier to see the content when we have just lines. And here, as you can see, I also changed the color and I changed the opacity of the grid. So now we have lines here, done. But what's the problem with lines, just to have lines? Let's imagine that you have a heading here, and the heading is a little bit bigger, like 120 maybe, and it goes in 4 columns, okay. And on the right side, you will have the paragraph, the text itself. That is, of course, a little bit smaller, which will be like 32 maybe. Too small, 40. And it will be somewhere here. And as you can see, the text is too close to each other. If it also has an image, and if you want to put text here as well, now the image is attached to the text. So probably in this case it would be better to start through the column, which is, well, it's too much space here. In this case we could create more columns here, but not for the center one. But there is much easier way to do that. We have these 7 columns, but in addition to the 7 columns, we create an additional grid that goes from right with 60, and that's exactly the Gata, the padding that we want to be between content. Offset is exactly the offset that goes from right to left to the point where it will start from. It can be 410 or minus 220, 1 column. And then we will start from here, but then the count should be 7. So now you have everything like super clear. It depends on what grid you prefer, what grid will allow you to present content in a much better way. You have content, and then you understand, okay, I want it to be a little bit more interesting, so I'll use asymmetrical grid. And because I will be using asymmetrical grid, I want the content to start from there and to finish there. So it will go, so we'll add this additional padding to cover all the spaces and distances. And in this case, image will be here and the text will be somewhere here, which will allow me to put the content like that. Command G, and this will be like kind of your presentation, or we can go even one column to the right to make it a little bit more, even more interesting, where the text will go from top left to the bottom right. Let's add again Command P and splash. We are still talking about business side, or maybe it will be technology. Not this type of technology. Doesn't make sense. Okay, probably it will be much better way. Oh, code. We were talking about code here. And boom, here you have a presentation. To me, of course, it doesn't make sense to have it here. And it's still a little bit weird layout. I would probably go with something like at least this. But this is how you create this grid. And as I said, so the first one is center, so we just create, let's create another here. F 16 by 9, then layout grid plus, go here, grid, columns, and then you want to have something more interesting, but you have more flexibility. 9 columns. 9 columns, but not stretched center. From the center, we will have something about like 160 size. The gutter 0. This gives us lines. Because I don't see lines here, I want to make them a little bit more visible, so I'm changing opacity and color. Now I have lines that will allow me to create this content. Or maybe 7 is too much, 9 too much, 5, but then we'll increase the size of the columns. Something like this, 320. Perfect. But now, if I don't want to be in a situation where I have the image here and text attached to that, in this case, I will need some kind of gutter. And to create this gutter, we create another grid plus columns. But in this case, they will go from right. And we will need to measure this distance first. 160. So then we go back to grid, offset 160, this way we'll start. Then the size of our padding between columns, let's imagine it will be the same 60. And then the gutter is the gutter is the size of the column. How much did we set here? 320. When you set 320 minus so we have 160 on the right side, then we have 60, and then till the next one it will be 320 minus 60. Enter. Done. So this is how it works. So now we have padding, but also I'll change the color of it to something different, so it's not so bright. And now we have additional padding that allows us to separate the text from the media, for example, from the graphics, or to separate the heading from the text on the right side. So this is how we create this type of grid that is a little bit more unconventional, but at the same time more interesting. Grids shouldn't stop you. Sometimes you can go, you know what, just click here, columns 1, stretch with a margin from both sides 120 or 150, and that's it. And all the content later in the presentation that you will create will be right in the middle, where you will have heading and then image. The next slide that you will create, it will be, of course, heading is usually much bigger, 120. The next slide will be heading and paragraph or description. And that's it. And this will be the entire presentation. Yes, it will be boring, but sometimes it works. Don't allow greed to stop you from creating the project, the presentation itself. But I wanted really to show you how you can be creative with grids to present the content the best way. Okay? Got it now, right? Let's go further. The next important point when you're creating presentation, layout. Layout can be completely different. When we'll start creating presentation in one of the next lessons in this module, but one of the next lessons of this series about presentations, we will cover some of the layouts. And yeah, the layout in this case depends on the grid. So content defines the grid, and then grid defines the layout. Got it. The next thing, typography. Typography for the presentation is usually depends on, well, audience. Because if you're creating something like a corporate for a client, and you understand that, well, it should be something not super creative, and typography shouldn't be seen as typography. People should see just text itself. People should see just content, not typography. For example, when you look at these slides, right, you see how everything is sleek, so beautiful, so perfect. Why so? I'm using Helvetica Neue, if you want to. And looks amazing because Helvetica itself is a piece of art already. And that's why everything looks like a finished work. But honestly, I wouldn't use Helvetica if I created this masterclass or if I created this presentation for clients. I would use something different. I would use something like Verdana, something really, really super boring and invisible, something like this. Or I would go with Montserrat. Yep. So now you don't see the typography itself. You see the text, you see the content. And that's why Montserrat is one of the most popular typefaces when it comes to non-designers. Non-designers really love Montserrat because it's easy to read, because it's wide, which is again makes it more readable, has great legibility, and at the same time people don't see typography. They don't see the typeface, they see content. So that's why the first thing is audience. Who can define the, because my audience are designers, so that's why it looked like a design, like a sleek design. Audience. Next thing is brand. Sometimes when you're creating something for a specific brand, then you are following the brand guidelines of that client or of your company, or you have brand typography yourself, brand typefaces, so you're using them. Like, yeah, my brand typefaces are Bebas Neue, Bebas Pro Neue, and also Helvetica Neue. That's why I'm using them in most of the cases. And the final type is random. This is where you just define, you know what, I don't have brand. I understand that, well, my audience is some different people. Then you can go here with something like Fira Sans. Looks interesting, cool, awesome. Source Sans Pro. A little bit better, a little bit more elegant, amazing. Then maybe, of course, you will choose Inter. It's not so interesting as Helvetica, but also a good point. Or just go with Roboto. It doesn't matter. Because if you have to present something, It's better to present something with something people can read rather than to spend weeks defining what typeface to choose, and in the end you're like, I haven't finished my presentation yet, so I'll probably won't be able to present it. So don't spend too much time here as well. Choose the typography based on audience, brand, or just choose randomly something that is readable, understandable, has good accessibility, which is defined by readability and color, and that's it. And go further. And later we'll also create some style guides, because when you're creating presentations, it's better to create a style guide from the very beginning. So then later, if you think like, okay, I have 10 different clients, and for all of them I have to create a presentation, but at the same time each of them are a little bit different, so I can change. I'll create a kind of presentation template for myself, like presentation kit for myself, and then I will just change typefaces easily, colors easily, because I will use styles, and that's it. We'll cover how to create typography style guide and color style guide for the presentation also later in this series of this module. Adjustments. What does it mean? Why did I include that? Well, when it comes to presentation, presentation is graphic design. And the difference between web design, mobile apps, and graphic design, so graphic design is static, while web design and mobile design, or just that design, is dynamic. What does it mean, dynamic? You can open the same app on different screens, and your content will be presented in a different way because of different size, different width of the screen. Website, it can be responsive. People can stretch their screens, squeeze them. And in this case, of course, it will be different, completely different. Content will be dynamic. Dynamically will, not the content itself will change, but the layout will change, because the grid will be squeezed. So when it comes to graphic design, here we have static view. It's just 1920 by 1080 presentation. That's it. And in this case, well, it's better to be a little bit more pixel perfect. And what do I mean by that? Well, as you can see, this heading and this paragraph, they're not aligned. Why? Why they're not aligned? How is it possible? Even if I make this thing, they're still not aligned. I changed the letter spacing. They're still not aligned. Why? Let's check the boxes. Maybe we did something wrong. Let's select this one. No, the box is aligned. And this box, it's also on the grid. What's the problem? Well, every single letter has their own patterns. Every single letter. If I leave just H here, you see it has padding on the left, it has padding on the right, and it has padding at the top and at the bottom. But the thing is, the bigger the letter, the bigger the padding. And because of that, we have to make these adjustments. So let's bring back the word heading. When it comes to graphic design, what we have to do, well, not have to do, should do. At least this is my recommendation, because I create many presentations and I create many designs, and I can tell you that pixel perfection is not so important. Only designers see that, and of course it's something that, well, brain still feels something is wrong. So if you don't, user's brain or viewers of the presentation brain feel something weird, something wrong, we have to make adjustments. And these adjustments are some things like moving some of the text that will sit exactly on the grid and that everything will be aligned. Now heading and paragraph are aligned. Let's take a look at this view. You see static pixel is aligned with the grid, but adjustment go a little bit out of the grid. But when I select, even this text is out of the grid. Why so? Because I did adjustments. It's optical adjustment of the content. And the image itself here, it goes from left to right, everything is perfect. But the text here, as you can see, it was misaligned. So that's why we have to move the contents that it sits on one line as paragraph. Oh, we can go in closer. Can we go here? Yep. So they sit on one line together just because each letter in typography has their own padding, and we have to keep that padding in mind. When we make text bigger, it means that we shouldn't only change the letter spacing, but we also have to make an adjustment of the position of the first word in that specific paragraph that we are creating. So this is where we create these adjustments. Now, because we are still here, I want to show you also how to create this view. Maybe you want to create them for wireframes, or maybe when you'll create your template for presentations, how to create this cross here without going with pen tool and then going like this, and then we create dots here. This is one of the ways to do that, but there is a little bit different way. So you create a rectangle, okay? Then you go to the edit mode, select on the all the dots, go to vector, join selections, join selection. You click here, done, created. Now you press Shift X and you have this intersection of all the points, and if you want to, you can also add fill with a different color, something light here, something lighter here, but a little bit darker than that one. And now you have the rectangle for like a template for example, when you want to create a wireframe, digital wireframe, or to show that the image should go here. In this case, you just do that and it will work. It will stretch, it will have any size that you want. This is how you do, this is how you use Figma Pro Secrets. Probably you've never used join selection, right? So now you know where to use it and how to use it, how to create one. Perfect. So once adjustments are done, this is where we can go to style. And by style, I mean what the graphics you will use, what colors you will be using for your particular presentation. It can be absolutely any style that you would like. Here, just an example that we can go with the minimalism style. As you can see, all my presentations, all my masterclasses, all my courses, I use the minimalism. Why so? Because I want to focus and guide people who watch my courses on a specific element, and I don't want to overwhelm them with additional information, like let's imagine like these things here. That one will be yellow, another one will be purple, like pink, and both of them will have layer blur 200, and then we'll bring it to the very back of the screen and we will change opacity a little bit. And now let's make this even more interesting. We will put them on the other side, Shift H, Shift V, put here, but now this part will be a little bit smaller while this one will be a little bit bigger. It's still kind of minimalism, but I would say it goes more to a creative way where you can go with these ideas. And as you can see, we can create them super fast and easy. Later, I'll show you in the next lesson, I'll show you how to create it specifically. We'll go like step by step. But let's get back to styles. The style can be minimalism, it can be coach style. This is how I call this style, coach style. Why I call it this way? Well, because, okay, the color is on top of everything still. Here, no. So, coach style, because if you go and take a look at different life coaches, you will see that usually they have the same style, all of them. They have the same style, and usually because they create their presentations on Canva, and Canva has their own templates. You can go and take a look at the different templates. Maybe you can get inspiration from there. I personally, as a designer, because I design everything with Figma, I take inspiration from Dribble, or sometimes from Behance, or sometimes from even store. When I go to IKEA, for example, I look at all those posters and I'm like, oh my God, I love this layout. Oh, I love this idea of putting the image on this side and text here. Oh, the price is really big here. I can change the price to some number like 90% to show like the metrics changed by 90%. And this is where I get inspiration from. But you can also get inspiration from different areas like Canva as well. Then brutalism. I'm completely not a huge fan of brutalism. If you go to Gumroad, you will see brutalism style. That's not my thing, but for some people like it. It's different. Minimalism is maybe it's too overused. I will still continue using that because it just provides better user experience, in my opinion. Corporate style. Corporate style is something that is a little bit more in particular colors. It has a specific typography, usually they're a little bit more boring. But by boring, I mean from design perspective, because from client perspective, they are exactly what they want to see. They want to see what's inside, not the wrapper, not the, I don't know, like, not just something that is outside. No, they want to see the content. And that's why it's usually has a specific colors. Then business style or marketing one, this is where you have lots of infographics. How to create infographics we'll also cover in this series, in this module. And then I call it like elegant or brand style. This is where you use display typefaces that create like every single slide like a piece of art, which is awesome, but only if you understand who you're designing for and you know exactly that that's exactly what they should see. Because in most of the cases, what I saw from like these presentations, people look at each slide and each slide look like a piece of art, but behind this art, you don't see what's inside, you don't see the content. So that's why just be careful with elegant or brand style. I just called it this way. You can find and call them different way, like minimalism and brutalism. That's definitely incorporate. That's definitely like styles. You can call them this way. But business, elegant, and coach, this is just my naming for that. But just keep in mind that you can have different styles. The most important to keep consistency across all the slides in one presentation, within one presentation. Okay, now let's go further. Graphics. When it goes to graphics, again, it depends on the style that you're using. Maybe you will not have infographics at all. You will use just numbers. Something like these, condensed typefaces like Bebas New or Roboto condensed. But still not too condensed, maybe Anton. Do I have this? Yep. Boom, something like really bold, or impact. Impact definitely will be bold and perfect number. Or maybe if I have it here, Dean condensed. Yep. So beautiful. I would also use empty Knox, but unfortunately I don't have it here. It's really a really great condensed typeface. If you can buy one, I definitely recommend. Oh, that's a really good one. Neutronic. Neutronic. Cool. Not the best one, I would say, when it comes to. And so by me, let's go to Google Fonts. It will take time for us to find something even condensed, but at the same time really interesting. Antonio, not. I don't like the. I wouldn't say that it's a well-designed typeface, because the percentage sign is much wider than the 4, and 4 is not consistent with the 0. So basically, I don't know who designed that, but not the best way, not the best typeface. So you got the idea. Sometimes you could go with banners, boom, something. Let's make it playful. You know what? Boom. This is a Supercell company that create those games. So we go with banners for everything. And the game that we just discussed today, by 40% our DAO grew plus 40% DAO. But for DAO, daily active users, this is the metric that is used in business, so you can focus on that metric as well. And here robot is something a little bit less interesting. And here it will be like 40 and right below it. And semi-bold. Boom. As you can see, so you can go with this style, but you have to know who you're creating it for. The next thing, graphics, when it comes to graphics or media that will be used. You can go with this style that we'll create in one of the next lessons, different backgrounds. It can be this type of background. It can be the background without those lines, but maybe we'll have something like this. Let me switch from the dash one to the solid one. That will go like that. And then move up. Done. Select all the lines. Move them, bring them to the top. V. And much wider. Still inside. Like that. Maybe we'll create some additional graphics like this. And then it will be also a gradient that goes from blue to something purple. Maybe not purple, but just dark blue. Light one. I really loved when it was the light one. And size 1. So maybe you will have this corporate style where you will have all these lines that show the future. Usually it was like that. How to create these things we will also talk a little bit later in one of the next lessons. Or it can be an infographic like that shows that everything grew by this percent, but some metrics went down, which is fine because that's exactly what we were looking for. And then you will use for these guys this color, and the most important like that. How to create infographics, again, we'll cover this later. But when you're creating a presentation, you have to know what you're creating it for, and if it's more creative, then you can go with this style. If it's a presentation for the game company where you're working at, you can use your brand typefaces, and instead of graphics to use numbers. Or if it's something really super corporate, then you can go with infographics. And sometimes if you want to show like some additional things like intersection of different areas, and then like different layers, then you create something like this. how to create all of them in the next lessons. But just keep in mind that you can do that. The next one is test. Every single time, test your presentations. Always, always test. Go from slide 1 to slide last one and check that everything exactly where it should be, and that no slides that are missing, because when you will present that, you will not have time to change things. So you will just present. So test your presentations. And one of the final things, if you can add animations and motion, you can go with it. Go for it. If it's something creative. If you're creating like a corporate one or for webinars, sales webinars, I don't recommend you to create animations, because they will distract people from what you're talking about. And in this case, you will just lose their attention. While they can look great, but for corporate and sales webinars, I don't recommend you to use this kind of animation and motion. But when it comes to graphic design, when it comes to show and tell, to presentations in the company, to show to other designers, to show your presentation to your stakeholders, and sometimes to clients, it will cause that wow effect. Everything about motion design covered in the motion UI design, and you have a discount for that, by the way, in the first module. You can take a look at that. So then go for it. Create those animations where the first slide look like that, and then when you go to the next slide, this information disappears, the new appears, and I'm like, wow, what? How did you do that? Designers will say, or client might say, oh, wow, that was cool. You see, so animation always gives motion. Just add E here, and we will have emotion. So motion always causes emotion. So keep it in mind, and if you know how to create animations and motion and where to use them, go for them. And the final thing, present your idea. The presentation itself. If you're creating it with Figma, then in Figma here in the top panel, you have this view to present and preview. Preview is one of the newest features where you can just press Shift Space, and then you will have your presentation, and you can go like presentations with Figma, perfect. So you don't have to go to the presentation mode. You will see everything here, like here. Probably it was on this side. Okay, like that. And you go through the entire presentation. Okay, awesome. So we covered everything that we wanted. Amazing. Or maybe you just click present, and then that's exactly how you will present it. So you go here, you go to full screen view, you put your cursor somewhere outside of the presentation. That's it. Now this is your presentation, and you go, hey guys, today we'll be talking about design. In this design for secrets module, graphic design. You see, it's better to test a little bit. So graphic design module, presentations with Figma, or how to create a really amazing deck for your client, for a creative market to make a little bit more money, or how to create a deck for a sales webinar. Let's dive in. Today we'll be talking about all the aspects that the presentation consists of. It will be strategy, content, typography, color, styles, like all these different things. So let's go step by step and cover every single type. Strategy, we'll always start with strategy. We go from point A to point B, so we have to know where we start and where we're moving to. And we think like, what will be the shortest way to go from point A to point B? And it works and applies to presentations as well. User experience. When it comes to user experience, we understand that presentation is a product, is a project that will be presented to other people. So we have to provide good user experience, seamless user experience, so they don't think about the proportions, they don't think about typography, they don't think about style and colors. They just consume the content that you deliver to them. And in this case, you have to know all the answers to the question, who, where, when, wow, why, how, and what's next. Once you answered all those questions, go to storytelling and create a really compelling, beautiful story for your presentation. The story that will sell, the story that will attract attention, the story that will convert. But always, always provide context first. Then show them where they are going to. Then show them where we started from and what challenges are ahead of us. Then handle objections. After that, show the result that we will come to, and go into conclusion. But with a conclusion, usually I recommend you to ask some question or to start the next interaction. And the interaction can be, go to this link, download that file here, and the link below, or mail to, and then your email, how to contact you, or ask your questions. So basically, this will be the conclusion. Once you understood the user experience, once you build the storytelling, it's time to go to content. And content is king. When it comes to presentation, content is king, because we have to think about what content we'll present, but at the same time, we have to understand what we will say in addition to what we'll show. And what will show exactly the content that will be presented on the presentation. So think about it, like the extended version that you will say and the condensed version of the content that will be presented. Then when you have content, you think about like how I'm going to present it. Should be interesting or a little bit more boring? Interesting, asymmetrical layout, asymmetrical grid. A little bit more boring, well, but boring means a little bit more corporate. Let's say it this way. A little bit more corporate than symmetrical one. For symmetrical layout, we have to use this grid. For asymmetrical one, we'll use this grid. If we want to go with something interesting, then it will be this way. But at the same time, we understand, well, at some points, when we'll present our content, some of our content will show like 5 different benefits that people will get. And we want to show them one by one, which means that we at least have to have 5 columns, or it should be 10 columns that we will give for each benefit. We will give 2 columns. Okay, so this is how content actually defines the grid. Got it. All right, so now when we have grid, we can go to the layout and we can create different layout. Like that. Yeah, because I added a little bit like additional slides. I showed you how to create grids, so that's why we have this slide. We didn't plan that. Layout. Based on the content and grid, we define the layout and we create the layout that we will use in our presentation. And then we go to typography. We define the typography. When we have content, first of all, we can start with just one typeface, and we will define what typefaces we'll use later. But that's exactly the point where we can already define them. What typeface we will use for headings and what typeface we'll use for paragraphs, or will it be the same typeface? That's the question. And it should be defined by the audience, brand, or we will choose something randomly. But by randomly, I mean still readable and accessible. But then we'll make some adjustments, because once we start creating something, maybe we can lose some alignment. And in this case, it's better to adjust alignment, adjust letter spacing, adjust line height. So all these different things we have to keep in mind, because it will be presented, and maybe sometimes people will want to download our presentation and they will see that and wouldn't want to see them some inconsistencies or, you know, broken lines. So in this case, we will go with something perfect, pixel perfect. And once we define the typefaces, we put all the content in our presentation. Everything is done. Now we can add some additional infographics and we can define the style of the presentation. And the style of the presentation can be completely different. Maybe we'll add lots of different images. Maybe we'll add additional like really bold lines if we want to go brutal, if we just decide to go corporate, and in this case we'll define our color palette in a little bit different way, and it will be really mild, and in most of the cases it will be blue. Okay? Once we define the style, it's time to create some infographics. Graphics and some media that we are going to add. This step will take most of the time. And we don't want to waste all this time from the very beginning without creating presentation itself. No, this is one of the final steps, because by this moment we already have the entire presentation. And within this presentation, we already have all the content inside. But now we can improve our presentation with some graphics. But because we have to create it or we have to find it somewhere, it will take time. So that's why this is one of the final steps of our presentation. And this is where we start creating it here and adding on each slide. Because if we have really tight deadlines, maybe we won't have enough time to create all these graphics. So then in this case, we'll go just with numbers, or we'll go with just additional colors and images from Unsplash. Once it's done, the presentation is done. But now it's time to test it and to go step by step through all the slides to understand that everything is perfect. Everything is exactly what we want to say, the way we want to say, and the way we want to present it. Okay, cool. So we test it, everything is perfect, we love it. We can, if we have still time, we can make something beautiful. We can add emotion, we can add motion design here. And motion design is always about state A and state B, and what is happening between these two states. But when it comes to presentation, we have slide 1 and slide 2, or slide 52 and slide 53. What will happen between these two slides? How they will connect together? Can we connect them together? Well, yes. We can take, for example, the image from one slide that will disappear when we'll go to the next slide, and the new image will appear. And you're like, what? Wow, this is so cool. How we came to this idea? How is it possible? And then you're like, wow, this is how we create these presentations. And because we know motion UI design, we can do that super fast and easy. And now it's time to present our idea, to pitch our idea to a client, to present our designs to our company, to show to our designers what we just accomplished, to show to those people sitting in front of us, those 1,000 people sitting in front of us, something new in the design industry, or to present that sales webinar to those people who want to buy something from us, but they just didn't know that we have something for them. That's the presentation, and that's it. As you can see, escape, go to the regular mode, go back. So, and this is where we have our presentation. It looks like that. We could go in a horizontal way. I prefer to create a presentation this way, and when I'm talking about within one topic, when I want to say a little bit more, then I go horizontally. But every single new idea, I go vertically. As you can see, every single slide here is a new idea. But within the slide, I can go horizontally and, for example, user experience, and here I will cover specifically who, the question who. And the question who, maybe it can be, you know, different way. User experience, who. And then here I will have a little bit different text. And then I'll go with each question to the right. So this is how you create presentations. And as you can see here, let's take a look at the anatomy of the presentation. Usually it has some corners, I call it corners, where we provide some context about in each slide, people know where exactly they are. This is also part of user experience. Then we also have some brand identity. So this is Alexander Hess Design Academy, Art Design Academy, and this is our premium program that they see here. This is Art Design Academy and presented by Alexander Hess. So done. And then the content is inside. And because I prefer minimalistic style, then because of that, I present everything in a minimalistic way, in a minimalism style where we have a clearly defined title, and then we have some graphics if we need to, and then we have some copy, some additional copy that allows us to present it the way we want it to present. So guys, it was a really long lesson. It's like a masterclass. Probably you are tired, maybe a little bit exhausted. Maybe I hope that you took some breaks, you put on pause and got back to this lesson again to continue it, but finally you watched it to the very end. Now you know what is a presentation, what it consists of. If you're already familiar with how to create presentations, now you know a little bit more, and maybe the puzzle, the picture itself is a little bit more fulfilled. The next thing, you learned more about grids. If you want to learn even more, then I recommend you Grids and Layouts Masterclass. You learned about typography masters, motion design, motion UI design masterclass. So if you want to dive into those specific topics, then just go for it. If everything that you get from here is enough for you, that's enough. Just go and present, just go and take a look at what you're already creating, but just go through this list of things and check everything that you already created. I hope that it was super useful lesson for you. Yes, we covered theory. Next, we'll go with practice. But before practice, we'll cover some things that will help us with practice. It will be also practical lessons. Now, you are ready to go further. It was a long masterclass. It wasn't a lesson, it was a masterclass. And I hope that you enjoyed that. And now you can create your presentations much easier and in a little bit different way that will make your workflow much more efficient, and at the same time your presentations clearer and more beautiful, and at the same time more attractive and maybe conversational. So see you in the next lesson. I'm proud of you that you watched it till the end. Great job. See you there. Today's lesson is really interesting because today you will learn two different methods on how to create seamless App Store screenshots lane. What is that? Well, if you are a mobile application designer or mobile application developer, or even if you are just a UX UI designer, product designer, sometimes even graphic designer, you heard, and of course you probably use your phone, and you, at some point of your life, you downloaded applications from the App Store or Google Play Market. And when you go there to download them, if it's something new for you, most likely you will check the screenshots. The screenshots that are provided right below the name of the application and its icon and a short description. Those screenshots show you what's inside, what the application look like. And while we, UX UI designers, product designers, usually have to create these screenshots, all these screenshots is part of graphic design. And that's why this lesson is here in the graphic design module. What is seamless App Store screenshot? Well, when two screenshots of the application are connected together through some element that connects these two screenshots, like in these cases, you can see we have a mobile application, a mockup that starts on the first screenshot, and then we see some part of it on the second screenshot. And that's exactly what connects them together. And this is what's called seamless screenshot lane. Here we see another example for the Adobe Express mobile application. As you can see, we have a gallery here of different posters or graphic design media. We have them here, and screenshot 2 and screenshot 3 are connected through this gallery. Another example is here. We see that on the background we have an image, a photo, and the sky, the clouds, the sun, and the mountains, and this field itself. It's just one photo that connects two screenshots together. And this connection, if you are familiar with Gestalt principles, there is a Gestalt principle called continuity. And it creates in the brain of the user, in the user's brain or the brain of the viewer, it creates the logic that, okay, if this is connected with a second one, so they have connection together, so they are talking about the same thing, but at the same time, it creates the logic that it can continue in the next parts of this design. So then people will continue scrolling. And this is one of the methods how to show people all other benefits of the mobile application that you're designing or you're creating the screenshots for. Because there can be up to 10 screenshots, and if you want to show all of them, most likely people will continue scrolling, but if you help them visually through the Gestalt principle continuity, that will be represented on the screenshot through the connection between screenshots. This is how you make user experience a little bit better. How to do that? Today we'll cover two different methods. The first one is the manual one, how to create seamless App Store screenshots lane, and the second one is automatic one. And in the next module, I'll show you how to create it super automatic. Much faster to use, but at the same time you'll be able to use it in when you're creating carousels for Instagram or even carousels for LinkedIn. Let's dive in. Let's start from the first method, the manual one. I want to show it to you because lots of people are still using it. I used it a lot back in 2015, 2016, and I can tell you that, well, while this method works, it's really it's not efficient. But in some places, if you are, for example, designing something not in Figma, in some places you will have to use that method because they don't provide you other options. So I want to show it to you so you know exactly what to do. So method 1, manual. First of all, for your convenience, I added here the size of the screenshot. It should be 1284 by 2778 when you're creating a screenshot for the App Store. And now let's create the manual method of connecting all these screenshots together. What we will do, let's create something like kind of gallery, and then through this gallery we'll connect the first screen and the second one. We create some elements here, combine them together, Command G, select, Command A to select again, Command P and splash, and go and press insert random. Then Unsplash will find random pictures for this gallery. Boom, download it, okay. For your specific case, of course, the gallery can be different, but because I'm not teaching you how to create the screenshots for a specific app, I show you the method how to create seamless App Store screenshot lane. So that's why keep in mind that if you, for example, designing a mobile application for the bookstore, or if you're creating something like fintech mobile application, you can put for the gallery, you can put lots of screenshots from the application itself, or some UI elements that will be inside, or it can be a gallery of stocks, and each card represents stocks that will be used, that people will be able to buy, for example, through this fintech mobile application. Next thing, I'll just make rounded corners just to make it a little bit more interesting. Rotate it, let's imagine, by 30 degrees. Move it up. Then I create a copy for the second lane, and this is the manual method. This is how I would do that back in 2015, and in some applications or tools, design tools, where I don't have other options, like maybe Keynote. And I remember that some people, even when they create seamless carousels in Canva or Keynote, they use the same method, mostly because they don't know about, let's imagine they're not using other tools, or they don't know how to do that in other tools, or they just use those tools and those tools don't provide them other options. So this is how we connected them together. And then let's imagine that I want to add some text. Then I'll create here additional line that will go from, let's imagine, from purple to purple. I'll even do that. Option, copy, and here, you know what, same purple, move it down, and copy of this color. Done. And here you will have app name with a logo, maybe with some description, and on the next screen you will have benefit 1, or it can be feature 1. This is manual method when you want to create through some element. Let's imagine it can be mockup, it can be a gallery, like in this case. This is how you can do that, this connection. Let's imagine what if, just what if, you want to connect through the image, through the photo that will be on the background. So let's take a photo, let's make it bigger, let's make it huge, like to the size of almost 2 screens. Again, connect 2 screens together, take the image, remove all the rounded corners, duplicate it and move it to the right side. Now, follow this idea. You know that in Figma we can use math, right? In every single lesson, I will provide you some advanced tips that you can use and that will make your work more efficient. So please follow them carefully. We know that in Figma we can use math, but we also know that the size of the screenshot is 1284. So in order, instead of moving this side manually, what we do, we click here, position X, minus 1284, enter. And this is how we connected them together in just a couple of seconds. Cool, right? Awesome feature. I want you to provide all these different additional tips that will make your work much more efficient. And now we have 2 screenshots connected together. And in this case, we have the same image, but also here we can provide some additional information about, again, FFF here, and here let's imagine there will be benefit 2, benefit of using this app, or what this app is providing to you, while on this side it will be benefit 3. You see, and This is how you connect these things together manually. Now, method, got it, right? It's super clear, and probably you use this method a lot yourself. I used it a lot back then. I hope that this feature, this additional feature with math, Figma Math, helped you a lot as well. The second method is the automatic one. Kinda semi-automatic, I would call it. The idea behind this method is you have a screenshot, but the next thing, what you do, let's call it screenshots together. And now what we do, let's imagine that we want to create 5 different screenshots. Here I press multiply 5, the width of the screenshot, and press enter. Now I have the size of 5 screenshots combined together. The next thing that I do, I create here the actual screenshot size, 1284, and that will be our screenshot 1. I take the screenshots, and if you follow the previous module, Figma Fundamentals, it's crucial to learn Figma Fundamentals before you go further, because it shows you not only how to use Figma, but also how in general the logic works behind all the elements that we designers create. And then even if you use another tool that has similar feature, you will be able to replicate it no matter what tool is it. While we are working in Figma, it doesn't mean that you have to you can't use the same method or the same logic or the same mindset in other tools. So select screenshots. That works as a combination of 5 screenshots, and press Command Option K, convert it into a component. And now what I do, I create 5 different screenshots. Let's rename them. Select all together, Command R, screenshot, number down, done. Screenshot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Perfect. And now what I do, I take the component here, press Option, and paste it here. Starting from the very beginning. So now inside of the screenshot 1, we have a component, screenshots. Now I take this component, Command C, select the second screenshot, Command V. Now I have it here. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the X position of the component, minus 1284. Okay? Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to take it from here, Command C, Command V, multiple 2, Command C, Command V, minus 1284, Command C, Command V, minus 1284. What we did, we took the screenshot, the screenshots component, pasted it in every single screenshot here, and we changed the position of the component instance to the size of the screenshot. For each next screenshot, we change the position X to the size of the screenshot. So now they're all connected together. And how does it work? This will be mind-blowing. Let's imagine that you want to create one image that will connect them all together. Command P, unsplash, and just insert random. Boom. Done. As you can see, everything is already done. So no matter what you will create here right now, it will be represented there. And here, even if you write a lot of text, it will be shown on screenshots. You got it, right? But of course, we are not connecting through text, because no, that's poor user experience. Because on App Store, and also in Google on Google Play Market, between screenshots you have gaps. Usually this gap is about like 20 pixels. And because of that, you see this text doesn't look good, like it doesn't connect well. So that's why text should sit exactly on the screenshot line itself. How to do that? For these purposes, we create layout grid that consists of columns, 5 columns because we have 5 screenshots, stretch, margin 0, gada 0 to create lines. And now we'll change opacity to like 60%. And now we know exactly where the text should be. So that's where it will be. App name here, 140. Here we will have benefit 1, benefit 2, benefit 3. And of course, at the top here, you can add, in addition to that, usually, by the way, the description goes at the top. Then we have this image here. And then here, 375 by 812 proportions multiply. As you can see, I'm moving really fast here, but just because we already covered all these things, all the single panel we covered in the module 1. So that's why I can move here really fast. By 2, something like 25. No, even, you know what? Multiply by 2.5. Perfect screenshot size. It will go somewhere here. Of course, we will want to have something like rounded corners. White color, stroke, 8. It's kind of our mock-up, really simple mock-up. And then let's imagine that in every single screen, we will have our mobile application. And then you see all the screenshots here, and they are connected through the image on the background. And if you don't want it to be an image, you can create an illustration or something like a line that goes through everything, and that creates this connection between all of these things. 12, arrow, dash, 100, and we will move it on the background behind all the screens. We see that we'll need to make some adjustments, something like to move this one here, to move arrow a little bit up, and to make this line. Boom. So now our brain creates immediately the connection through this line. It's just one simple line on the background, but it creates the connection between all these lines, between all these screenshots. And because we have a component here, we don't have to go and manually edit every single screenshot. We can do all the changes right here. And here you will have your mobile application inside. That will have, let's imagine that the first will show a logo, just maybe a logo of the mobile application. Usually on the first screenshot, we show the best feature that the mobile application has. So that's my recommendation for you. So you show what exactly is happening in the mobile application. On the second one, you can show some additional benefits or features and how they work. Let's imagine, I don't know, here we'll have a button. And above here we'll have text and some kind of gallery. It doesn't matter, it depends on what exactly the application that you're creating. But everything that we create inside of the component, we see everything here. And then we just select all the screenshot. It's better also Command R to change the name to current name, but in front of the current name, you call app name like that, screenshot 1 2 3 4 5, app name, version 2.9, and then screenshots, rename, and then you see app name version 2.9, screenshot 01, 02, 03, and 4 and 5. And then you go and click export as a PNG on JPEG. Usually I recommend you to export in the PNG, save it, that's it, done. As fast, as simple and easy like that. Instead of moving every single picture from left to right, you just take it, paste it inside of your component, and done. You have a connection immediately. If it should be just for the size of 2 screenshots, this is how you do that. I hope that you like this method, you will be using that, and if you want to learn method 3, just super automatic, seamless method, then check the next module, Content Creation Pro, how to design content for content creators, and you will learn one additional method, how to create super fast, seamless, all the elements that you need without creating additional like screenshots here. Everything will be in one place. You can check it there. But as of now, instead of using the manual method, you can still continue using it if you don't have other option, if you're not working in Figma. But if you're working in Figma, at least use the component method. By the way, I would call it, let's call it automatic, the component method. And in the next lesson, in the next module, you will learn another method. Awesome. Now go and create mind-blowing screenshots for your mobile applications, or even maybe for your, even for Instagram as a carousel, or you can create something like that for your portfolio, and you can put them multiple images that connect everything together. How cool it would be, can you imagine if we take, let's imagine even all these images from here, right? We take them, put them inside of the frame, add the color here, 120 for rounded corners, and let's imagine that the background will be F9, F6, F3. Even darker. Let's go with some darker version of the background. And this is what you can show in your portfolio, and here you will have some kind of heading. It's really huge in this case, so that's why the size is also huge. So heading, and then you show the mobile application that you created, or maybe in every single screenshot, you'll have different logos if you're a graphic designer. So think creatively about how you can use each method that you learn from these lessons, from this course. Cool, right? There are so many different ways. And then if you watch the previous lesson, also what you can do, of course, you can Shift A to convert it into auto layout. The second thing, wrap method. And then when you change their size, they jump on. By the way, can we do it this way? Everything is moving because it's not like every single piece is not a screenshot, but what we can do, object, you know already this method, rasterize selection, object, rasterize selection, and select all of them, rasterize them, and this is how you will be able to use it as a method to create boom, to create the responsive version of your website, of your portfolio. But the first two are connected together, the second two are connected together, and you have the third screenshot here. While we talked about how to create seamless App Store screenshots, now you know how to use them somewhere else. How cool is that? With every single lesson you learn something new. This is mind-blowing. And I'm really glad that you took this course and you learn so much from each lesson. And I'll be happy to see you in the next one. Enjoy. Now go practice. No. Don't go and watch the next one. Nah. Practice first. Do the same. Do the manual method first. Even if you want them much more efficient, do the manual first because it will help you in the future if you have never used this method before. And then go and use the component method. Okay? Learn it first. Practice. Memorize. And then go to the next lesson. Okay? Yeah, see you there.